Hello, this is Victor. I'm here with a new weekly painting, and this time I'm going to explain, I'm going to talk about base coating. Maybe it's one of the main steps we have to learn, and how to base coat, and this can depend a lot on which type of surface we want to do. So let's start first with this one. So if we want to base coat big flat areas like these ones, these are the most trickiest one, not to have brush strokes, so I recommend that you have first a very nice priming, and when you are going to when you're going to paint this, try to go with quite a thin paint and try to keep one direction, okay? So you will need to do I'm applying here in cubic green, and you want to go with the paint quite thin, but yeah, have to be all as well controllable. You want to do first one side. These are the most difficult parts, the most difficult things to paint, to base coat, right? To have a nice and clean base coat. So you want to, yeah, here you should not do what I did at the beginning, but I try to go first to the edge there, and now I go with one direction, okay? So I will let it dry. We are going to do as well the base. Okay, here the base, this thing. Okay, it's going to be quite a fast paint job. And now I will wait that this dries. If we are going to, oh, sorry, I missed this part. So we will wait that this dry, and we will need to do a second layer. This is the part that for sure you have to do 2 layers, because it's not going to be easy to have a clean paint job, okay? So you need to wait now, and then we are going to do a second layer later on. While this is drying, let's work a little bit on this thing, okay? Here I'm just taking a different direction and trying to do a bloody base. But here I want to talk this when you try to paint a surface that is completely the opposite as before. So it's super texturized. Here is even more important that you go very thin. Okay, so you want to go super thin and be sure that the paint goes into the recesses and you don't block and you don't clog the detail, okay? And you will see that it will do small bubbles, okay? Try to remove them, and just I'm taking very little paint every time and try to work, yeah, try to avoid that we have the bubbles. And this is the difficult part when you do this super texturized surfaces. These are all small skulls, okay? It's really a super texturized surface. Okay, when you go more on this one, you will see that you will have much less problems. Okay, but when you are in quite a texturized surface, you want to go quite thin to be sure that the paint goes into the recesses. Okay, so you can see, so the paint is going very nicely, and this is the part that especially you have to go very thin. If here you go thick, you will destroy this miniature. Okay, you will kill all the texture that this miniature have. Here you need to go thin, and when you are playing bone and this type of more pastel colors, really thin them down, because they are quite rich in pigments, and you can clog, and especially if you go to flat surfaces, you will see that it's very easy to see the strokes, the brush strokes of this thing, okay? So you want to go really thin with this paint and then do 2 coats. Even if I'm taking the paint directly from the pot, I have thinned down. I'm constantly adding water. I have clean water. I'm constantly adding water to the part where I'm taking the paint for. That way I always have my brush moisturized, and I try to keep the idea is to keep the paint thin, so you are not concerned about clogging the tail. You see here I've already dried. This paint dry super fast, and all the details are still visible here. I have not dried completely, but you will see when we do the wash, all will be visible. I'm not going them gold. I think it's the visual color. Here I'm going for quite a gore looking boat, navigating on top of a blood river. Okay, I'm gonna remove this here. Okay, so we keep playing. We know this thing on the thin layers will change with the contrast paint. Okay, the contrast paints will work quite different to the traditional paints, and there are some exceptions, like they can work with thicker coats to create the shading. Okay, in that case, as I'm using a layer paint, I'm using layer paints to the base coats. You can use layer or base, so I use any of the two to do the base coats. To be fair, I don't care too much on this classification from this workshop. I don't think you need to use only base paints for that. Okay, so you can see this Usbati bone, it's working perfectly here to give a nice layer. Okay, so this is how you work on a super texturized surface. Okay, this is really a very texturized. I will do the rest of camera. Makes no sense to keep painting the same. So here we see how this have dried, and you see that we can see some of the brush strokes. So to avoid that, one thing that I would recommend is that you do a second layer, and this second layer, okay, again with the paint quite thin, you go in the opposite direction. Okay, and again you try to go quite thin, so the paint will at the end flow, and try to avoid the brush strokes. Okay, so we go in the opposite direction now. And I do this a lot when I'm doing vehicles. So you want to paint in two directions. So one layer in one direction, the next layer on the opposite direction. So in that way I try to minimize, or I try to make the brush strokes the less visible possible. Okay, you can see. It was too thin, but once it's drying, check that there is not, especially the corners, because when you do the next one, sometimes the brush is leaving paint on the opposite corner. And now I will do the base. The base is not good. The base of this small pyramid is good enough, and it's not showing any of the strokes. Okay. So maybe one layer was enough there, but I'm just doing a second layer to be sure. You will see that now it's drying, so once I have dry, the brushes are not going to be visible. If you see some of the brushes, you can take always a little bit of water, and with the water you help yourself to have a more evenly distribution. And now, while this is drying, I will show you to work, and when you have also this type of surfaces like the smoke. These are, for me, I think the easiest surfaces that you can paint. Okay, I will apply Gauss blaster green. Okay, you will see on these ones again, always the base coat with layers. You need two thin coats, okay, especially if you are covering black, like in that case. If the base was white, if this smoke was white, it has been much faster, okay. But you can see I will apply one layer. You will see that this is not going to be good enough, okay, and then I will apply a second layer. So I will apply this first layer off camera, and I come back once this has dried completely, and also the layer I'm applying here. So you can see first of all that this was can dry is looking nice and clean. This one is still drying, so just one layer, but you can see that this is looking like crap. So now we need to apply a second layer, and the second layer will help a little bit. But when you're doing against a color like the Gauss blaster green, that is quite a light color against black, more likely you will need 2 to 3 layers to have a nice coverage. You see that the second layer is covering much better, okay, but it's a matter to be patient. Another way to do it is to apply first a bone color and then start applying Gauss blaster green. But yeah, if we are patient here, we can play. I think we will need about 3 layers, and we are going to have a nice coat, okay. So you can see here I'm showing 3 different cases. Okay, dark color over a dark prime or black prime. I show you how this looks like, so you can see as well here, once we have applied the bone color, the details are all visible. The color is not bound because you will need to do second layer, but this is the point, so you have to do 2 layers of very thin coats when you're doing surfaces that are very texturized, okay. I will not work this. I will do here the second layer, and I will show you how it looks like, and then we are going to do a third layer. So you can see that this looks much better now, and we are going to do a third layer on the Gauss blaster green part, and you will see that after this third layer we have a nice cover, okay. We don't know the third layer. So this is to show you that the base coat sometimes needs to do some work. And remember, I'm using here an H paint, so normally these paints are more for edge highlight and does not have a strong coverage. Okay, but you can see if I have prime white, it would have been maybe much easier, but as I want to keep a very dark color for the stones, for the pyramids, I decided to prime black this one, okay. You can see, but you can see now after the third layer, much better, almost perfect, and we don't have main problems, okay. So that's all what I want to explain here about base coating, sorry. So you have seen how to do flat surfaces. I explain you how to do very rough or very texturized surfaces, and then I also show how to do a light color over black primer, okay, to have a bright finishing. This is all for this part, and in the next one I will show you how I do the washes to have a very nice, so different ways to use the washes, okay, and where the washes are working the best. Yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you like this back to the basics This was a very basic one, but sometimes it's overlooked as well. So I just wanted to show with you how a very basic technique that is just base coating in a nice and even surface, okay, and even finishing. So that's all for this video. Please keep tuned, give a like if you have liked this video, and let me know what do you think about sharing basic techniques again. And let's see how all these rules change when the contrast paints are out. So that's all for now. As usual, thanks a lot for watching, and see you again later. Bye.